Good evening, visitors, and welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Sharon Bown, and joining us this evening from the Australian Army is Colonel Frank Colley. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching a broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. Australia's Federation Guard is the tri-service ceremonial unit of the Australian Defence Force. They provide a ceremonial presence at civil and military events and during visits to Australia by foreign dignitaries. The Guard will now dismount the catafalque party from the tomb of the unknown Australian soldier. If you are able, would you please stand and join in singing the national anthem?
Catafalque Party, attention! Catafalque Party, present,
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. With gold
Those requiring a seat, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved. And here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Lance Corporal Brian John Saltau. Brian Saltau was born in 1896 to John and Isabella Saltau of Warrnambool, Victoria. He grew up in Warrnambool and began his education there, later attending Dorcas Street State School when his family moved to Melbourne. He went on to the University Practicing School, passing his junior examination with distinction, and then taking the Commonwealth Public Service examination. The result of this exam saw him posted to the Customs Department. But Brian decided he preferred the job he had been working during his years of study and remained working as a clerk with G.G. Crespin and Son in Queen Street, Melbourne. Saltau retained his connection with the University Practicing School, however, serving as the secretary of its Old Boys Association, and was an energetic member of the Dorcas Street Presbyterian Church Mission. He was also a member of the South Melbourne Swimming Club. Although barely 18 years old at the outbreak of the war in August 1914, Brian went with his older brother Victor to enlist in the Australian Imperial Force as soon as it was possible, putting up his age to 21 so as to avoid the necessity of providing a letter of parental consent. The brothers were posted to the newly formed 5th Battalion and left for active service overseas just 2 months later, spending the first few months of 1915 training in the Egyptian desert. On the 25th of April 1915, the 5th Battalion took part in the landing on Gallipoli as part of the second wave. By the following day, Private Brian Saltau had been shot in the chest and shoulder. He was evacuated to hospital in Egypt. His brother Vic would go on to fight at Cape Helles and died of a gunshot wound to the abdomen about a week after Brian was taken to hospital. Private Victor Saltau returned to his battalion on Gallipoli in June 1915. His health suffered, however, and he was treated for influenza, impetigo, gastroenteritis, diarrhoea, septic sores and jaundice before being declared fit to rejoin his battalion in Egypt in mid-January 1916. On his return to Egypt after the Gallipoli campaign, the AIF underwent a period of reorganisation and expansion. As part of this process, Saltau was transferred to the 57th Battalion. Just over a month later, however, he became sick and spent more than 3 months at the dermatological hospital in Abbasia. A month after returning to the 57th Battalion, Saltau's unit was sent to France to serve on the Western Front. One of the last battalions to arrive, the 57th Battalion took part in the AIF's first major operation in France, the Battle of Fromelles. The attack was a disaster, but as the battalion played a largely supporting role, it suffered relatively light casualties. During the bitterly cold winter of 1916 to 1917, the 57th Battalion spent time rotating in and out of the front line in often damp and freezing conditions. In October 1916, Saltau was promoted to Lance Corporal. Within a few weeks, he was diagnosed with trench feet, a condition caused by standing in frozen, muddy trenches, and was again evacuated from the front line. He was not found fit to return to his battalion until February 1917. Around the time of Saltau's return, the Germans were conducting a withdrawal to the Hindenburg Line. In the Australian sector, battalions took their turns conducting patrols of no man's land, trying to determine where the Germans were and if the trenches opposite were still occupied, as the Germans pulled back bit by bit. The 57th Battalion re-entered the front line near Gerdecourt at 6 p.m. on the 15th of May 1917. It was thought that the Germans in the trench opposite were on the point of evacuating their positions, and so A Company was sent forward to attempt to take the trench almost as soon as they reached the front line. The raiding party encountered strong, thick barbed wire barricades and heavy machine gun fire and were soon forced to turn back. Lance Corporal Brian Saltau reached the barbed wire and was probably in the process of turning back when he and a comrade came under machine gun fire. Saltau was hit in the neck and killed instantly. His comrade returned to the officer commanding the raid, who insisted that Saltau's body was to be recovered. Give him a decent burial, because he was so well liked and held in great esteem by the men of the regiment. Brian Saltau was probably buried in or near Barley Trench in the Fleur sector of the line. Despite the best efforts of the men who recovered his body, Saltau's grave was later lost, and today he is commemorated on the Australian National Memorial at Villers-Bretonneux. He was 20 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Lance Corporal Brian John Saltau, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Cattle Party present
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget.
Catapult Party inwards turn. Catapult Party quick.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorial's development project. We particularly appreciate your visit despite the challenges posed by COVID, and we wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.